So given this evidence, um, we want to concentrate. So misallocation in general people think is an important idea, and then capital misallocation in particular seems to be important, as I've just argued because of this evidence I've shown you. And why you get this misallocation, I've already kind of hinted at it, is because of financing constraints. So you just can't take out as much money and therefore like acquire as much capital as you want to. So the big question, sort of from a macro development point of view, is can these financial frictions and this capital misallocation explain large differences in GDP, first of all, and then also in total factor productivity. So if you look at a bunch of studies in sort of macro development economics, so there's this very big paper by Hall and Jones. They argue that this is kind of exactly what I said before. You can't really explain the differences between countries with the total amount of resources they have. So if you just, like, I don't know, regress total GDP on total capital and total human capital, and you do that across countries, you're going to pick up everything in the residual, which is called TFP. So basically, aggregate resources don't really explain anything, and this is why some people think it's the allocation of resources that explains it. So anyway, we want to see it in a model. We can actually.
Wait, when you say aggregate resources, you mean TFP also? Or?
Sorry? By aggregate resources, I mean human capital, yeah, that's it. Like land,
geographic.
yeah, stuff like that. They sometimes store it in, but mainly so you have like a production function. So there's some charts. And pretty much what you do is just like you say. This, and you say there are two countries, like one rich country and one poor country. So like YR, so this is rich, and you're like so I'm doing it. So this is like, I don't know, 50 or something, so like the rich country has 50 times higher GDP than the poor country, so like US and Ghana or something. I think that's pretty true. And so they just say, like, if you just look at the ratio of these two, you're not going to get anywhere. Like, what you're going to pick up everything with is the ratio of this like intercept, which people call TFP, which is basically just the residual and the regression. I mean, sort of, I don't know, this only makes sense if you've seen active production function. All right. So you want to see how much of GDP, so Y, and TFPs, which is like the A in this setup, you can explain by financial frictions. And also you want to see how wealth inequality is affected by financial frictions. But that's kind of like a question on the side, which just can kind of happen to be able to answer this model, and it's interesting, so why not do it? So the short detour I want to make is standard growth theory, which I've kind of already hinted at, and I want to say like why it really doesn't work very well. So what you usually do in standard growth theory, you just assume that an economy is characterized by a representative consumer, it's called, at the representative firm. So the representative consumer just has a utility function, and his utility is just the present discounted value of utility over an infinite horizon. So I mean, why is it exactly like, I don't know. So this is just a utility function. Why is it until infinity, and why do you discount at great beta? It doesn't really matter, but that's just for simplicity. But the important thing is that there's only one representative consumer. It's not like a bunch of people. There's only one guy. The same is true for the production side of the economy. So there's only one representative firm, which has some technology. So KT is capital here, and C2 is consumption, by the way. And so you can chuck in different arguments here, like human capital right here. So this F is exactly what I had up here earlier, just a particular functional form. Doesn't matter. So for simplicity, we look at this. So usually, I don't know if you take undergraduate macro, I guess people always talk about Robinson Crusoe economies. So this is exactly what this is. Robinson Crusoe is like the representative consumer and the representative firm in one. So you just own, like he's the guy and he owns production technology at the same time, and he's just this dude on an island who like lives in isolation. So how do you justify? So obviously this is not a realistic representation of the economy because there's not just one Robinson Crusoe. There's like a bunch of guys. How do you justify this? So the one justification is like all people are identical. I mean, very clearly they aren't. But if they're kind of identical, it might not matter so much. The other justification is that markets are perfect. So representative consumer and representative firm are valid if markets are perfect. I'll say why that is true in this slide. So why is that? That if you assume that markets are perfect, the representative consumer and representative firm hold. So look at the representative firm, for example, so you can, I'll show that they're equivalent. So if you think that instead of there being just one producer, you have a bunch of producers that are indexed by I, so you have like I equals 1 to n producers, and they all have different production technologies, Fi of Ki. What perfect capital markets, so perfect markets in general, would imply what I said earlier, that marginal products are equalized. So for any pair ij, you get that this holds. Alternatively, you could define the aggregate production function to be this function here, which is just sort of taking total output. So you're summing over all I of these individual production functions, and then you're allocating capital in the efficient way. So if you solve this maximization problem and you take the first order condition, you get the same allocation. So this is just the definition of an aggregate production function that you have if you have heterogeneous agents. If all these FIKIs are the same, so there's no I on the F here, then you would just have that each guy gets the same amount of capital and that the big F is equal to the small f. And that's the first thing I said again. Then that would be the first justification. If everyone is identical anyway, it doesn't matter. But we don't think so. So the other alternative justification is that capital markets are perfect. So as I said before, I mean this is pretty counterfactual. People aren't identical. Markets aren't perfect, which we saw like previously. It's not a problem per se. I would say if you're interested in, I don't know, technical change, or if you're interested in some problem that doesn't where you aren't interested in distribution or one of these issues where you actually care about heterogeneity, but here we are actually interested in this, and this approach just ignores all issues of distribution by construction. So it also ignores poverty, therefore, which we're obviously interested in. So if I say poverty here, it's kind of, I mean relative poverty, so poverty, not absolute poverty, not like living below $1 a day. I mean, like the 5% of the population in an economy which have the lowest income. So if you don't have anything to say about distribution, you can't say anything about poverty, right? So it's obvious, and in particular, this approach, because it either assumes that people are identical or it assumes that markets are perfect, just completely assumes away all misallocation by assumption. So again, this is in very sharp contrast to what we see in the data.